ISKCON Dublin for another week of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're starting today from verse number 42 of third chapter of the first canto. Maybe we can, before we start, just to quickly recap last week. Anyone remembers any of the topics we covered last week? There's quite a lot we covered. We did the whole second chapter, or middle of second chapter we started, and then we almost finished the third chapter. Anyone? So we did, let me recap, we covered it started with glorification of bhakti. There was in the middle of second chapter, the 9 stages of devotional service, with famous verse, Shu Shu Shu, Shudadanasya. And then glorify the Bhagavan, Gunavatars, Lila Avatars, that was all, and discussed. We answered questions of the sages. We established that Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And now we're in the middle of glorifying the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's we did two verses last Friday. So it's 42. And as always, we will start with reciting Srimad Bhagavatam Mahima Stotra of Sri Sanatana Goswami. That's from Sri Krishna Lila Stava. 108 obeisances to Krishna's Vrindavan Lila. Hare Krishna. Sarva Shastradi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikpada. On nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kali Dvanto Ditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Patnaya Prema Vaksha Ksharayate Sarvamda Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishna Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madhika Bandho Matsangi Madguru Mat Mahadana Manishtara Bhagya Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadaye ahati chochataraka hana muncha kadachima premna hrit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
I apologize for my voice. If it's just started today, so bear with me. So we are starting on verse 42, and we're just plunging. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasudeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink. Purport. All transcendental messages are received properly in the chain of disciplic succession. This disciplic succession is called parampara. Unless therefore Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literatures are received through the parampara system, The reception of knowledge is not bona fide. Vyasadeva delivered the message to Shukadeva Goswami, and from Shukadeva Goswami, Sutta Goswami received the message. One should therefore receive the message of Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami, from his representative, and not from any irrelevant interpreter. Emperor Parikshit received the information of his death in time, and he at once left his kingdom and family and sat down on the bank of the Ganges to fast till death. All great sages, rishis, philosophers, mystics, etc. went there due to his imperial position. They offered many suggestions about his immediate duty, and at last it was settled that he would hear from Shukadeva Goswami about Lord Krishna. Thus the Bhagavatam was spoken to him. Sripad Shankaracharya, who preached Mayavada philosophy and stressed the impersonal feature of the Absolute, also recommended that one must take shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, for there is no hope or gain from debating. Indirectly, Sripad Shankaracharya Indirectly, Sripad Shankaracharya admitted that what he had preached in the flowery grammatical interpretations of the Vedanta Sutra cannot help one at the time of death. At the critical hour of death, one must recite the name of Govinda. This is the recommendation of all great transcendentalists. Shukadeva Goswami had long ago stated the same truth, that at the end one must remember Narayana. That is the essence of all spiritual activities. In pursuance of this eternal truth, Srimad Bhagavatam was heard by Emperor Parikshit, and it was recited by the able Shukadeva Goswami. And both the speaker and the receiver of the messages of Bhagavatam were duly delivered by the same medium. Verse number 43 is memorizable. Krishna svadamupagate dharmagyanam visaha kaladnashchadisham esha puramarko dunodita. Translation. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna has his eternal Dhamma, or abode, where he eternally enjoys himself with his eternal associates and paraphernalia. And his eternal abode is a manifestation of his internal energy, whereas the material world is a manifestation of his external energy. When he descends on the material world, he displays himself with all paraphernalia in his internal potency, which is called Atmamaya. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he descends by his own potency, Atmamaya. His form, name, fame, paraphernalia, abode, etc. are not therefore creations of matter. He descends to reclaim the fallen souls and to re-establish codes of religion which are directly enacted by him. Except for God, no one can establish the principles of religion. Either he or a suitable person empowered by him can dictate the codes of religion. Real religion means to know God, our relation with him, and our duties in relation with him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving this material body. The conditioned souls who are entrapped by the material energy hardly know all these principles of life. Most of them are like animals engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. They are mostly engaged in sense enjoyment under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, or salvation. They are still more blind in the present age of coral or Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal addition of the animals. They have nothing to do with spiritual knowledge or godly religious life. They are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the jurisdiction of the subtle mind, intelligence, or ego. But they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, and material prosperity. They can risk their lives to become a dog or hawk just after leaving the present body, for they have completely lost sight of the ultimate aim of life. The personality of God as Sri Krishna appeared before us just a little prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga, and he returned to his eternal home practically at the commencement of Kali Yuga. While he was present, he exhibited everything by his different activities. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita specifically and eradicated all pretentious principles of religiosity. And prior to his departure from this material world, he empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the messages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And thus both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam are like torchbearers for the blind people of this age. In other words, if men in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the sun bone of life, Lord Shri Krishna personified. We must therefore accept Srimad Bhagavatam as the direct representation of Lord Krishna. One who can see Srimad Bhagavatam can see also Lord Shri Krishna in person. They are identical. 44. All learned Brahmanas, when Shukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. Purport. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Shri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam, if one has heard it from a self-realized great soul like Shukadeva Goswami. One cannot, however, learn Bhagavatam from a bogus hired reciter whose aim of life is to earn some money out of such recitation and employ the earning in sex indulgence. No one can learn Srimad Bhagavatam who is associated with persons engaged in sex life. That is the secret of learning Bhagavatam. Nor can one learn Bhagavatam from one who interprets the text by his mundane scholarship. One has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Shukadeva Goswami and no one else, if one at all wants to see Lord Shri Krishna in the pages. That is the process, and there is no alternative. Suta Goswami is a bona fide representative of Shukadeva Goswami because he wants to present the message which he received from the great learned Brahmana, Shukadeva Goswami presented Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father, and so also Suta Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Shukadeva Goswami. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word Nivishna means that Suta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning one can assuredly see Lord Shri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Any comments? Just continue.
Just that famous part at the end. Cannot,
Yeah.
you know.
Action and
Yeah.
pure in action, pure in pure in thought,
Yeah.
or mind and action.
And words.
Yeah.
Okay, pure in mind is not
Cannot be
pure in
wrapped
action.
in attention unless one is pure in.
Eating, sleeping.
Yes.
Wrap attention from the right person. Yeah.
Prabhupada gives the process or the progressive stages of how we should behave, what we should do in order to see Krishna in the pages, and it's mentioned here. I like that the expression, drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. is specifically, as you mentioned, specifically mentioned here in a verse, and Prabhupada repeats it, the word rapt attention, not just hearing it. Simple hearing. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention.
You're right on time to start chapter 4.
Hare Krishna.
I have
So,
chapter 4, okay.
we are starting chapter 4 of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada. We'll try to, it's a short chapter as far as I glanced, and Narada only appears at the end, so we'll try to make it. We won't skip. So verse number 1. On hearing Sutta Goswami speaks thus, Shonaka Muni, who was the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Sutta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Purport. In a meeting of learned men, when there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualifications of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Sri Shonaka Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Sri Sutta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as he had heard it from Shukadeva Goswami, and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous acharya, and at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter, the particular circumstances, in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Shonaka, could estimate the value of the speaker, Sri Sutta Goswami, simply by his uttering Yataditam and Yatamati, and therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original acharya. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting, where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam, so that the real purpose can be served without difficulty. Unless this situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation for extraneous purposes is useless labor both for the speaker and for the audience. Number 2. Shonaka Rishi said, "O Sutta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukadeva Goswami." Purport. Sutta Goswami is twice addressed herein by Shonaka Goswami out of great joy, because he and the members of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Shukadeva Goswami. They were not interested in hearing it from a bogus person who would interpret in his own way to suit his own purpose. Generally, the so-called Bhagavatam reciters are either professional readers or so-called learned impersonalists who cannot enter into the transcendental personal activities of the Supreme Person. Such impersonalists twist some meanings out of the Bhagavatam to suit and support impersonalist views, and the professional readers at once go to the 10th canto to misexplain the most confidential part of the Lord's pastimes. Neither of these reciters are bona fide persons to recite Bhagavatam. Only one who is prepared to present Bhagavatam in the light of Shukadeva Goswami, and only those who are prepared to hear Shukadeva Goswami and hear his representative are bona fide participants in the transcendental discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. Number 3. In what period and at what place was this first begun, and why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? Purport. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is the special contribution of Srila Vyasadeva, There are so many inquiries by the learned Shonakamuni. It was known to them that Srila Vyasadeva had already explained the text of the Vedas in various ways up to the Mahabharata for the understanding of less intelligent Shudras and fallen members of the family of twice-born man. Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all of them because it has nothing to do with anything mundane. So the inquiries are very intelligent and relevant. Number 4. His, Vyasadeva's son, was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. Prabhu. Srila Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul, and thus he remained always alert not to be trapped by the illusory energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, this alertness is very lucidly explained. The liberated soul and the conditioned soul have different engagements. The liberated soul is always engaged in the progressive path of spiritual attainment, which is something like a dream for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul cannot imagine the actual engagements of the liberated soul. While the conditioned soul thus dreams about spiritual engagements, the liberated soul is awake. Similarly, the engagement of a conditioned soul appears to be a dream for the liberated soul. A conditioned soul and a liberated soul may apparently be on the same platform, but factually they are differently engaged, and their attention is always alert, either in sense enjoyment or in self-realization. The conditioned soul is absorbed in matter, whereas the liberated soul is completely indifferent to matter. This indifference is explained as follows. Number 5. While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth, although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them made no distinction between male and female, but the sage made such distinctions. Perfect. In the Bhagavad Gita 5.18, it is said that the learned sage looks equally on the learned and gentle Brahmana, a Chandala, dog-eater, a dog, or a cow due to his spiritual vision. Srila Shukadeva Goswami attained that stage. Thus he did not see a male or female. He saw all living entities in different dress. The ladies who were bathing could understand the mind of a man simply by studying his demeanor, just as by looking at a child one can understand how innocent he is. Shukadeva Goswami was a young boy, 16-year-old, and therefore all the parts of his body were developed. He was naked also, and so were the ladies, but because Shukadeva Goswami was transcendental to sex relations, he appeared very innocent. The ladies, by their special qualifications, could sense this at once, and therefore they were not very concerned about him. But when his father passed, the ladies quickly dressed. The ladies were exactly like his children or grandchildren, yet they reacted to the presence of Vyasadeva according to the social custom, because Srila Vyasadeva played the part of a householder. A householder has to distinguish between a male and female, otherwise he cannot be a householder. One should therefore attempt to know the distinction between spirit soul without any attachment for male and female. As long as such distinction is there, one should not try to become a sannyasi like Shukadeva Goswami. At least theoretically, one must be convinced that the living entity is neither male nor female. The outward dress is made of matter by material nature to attract the opposite sex, and thus keep one entangled in material existence. A liberated soul is above this perverted distinction. He does not distinguish between one living being and another. For him, they are all one and the same spirit. The perfection of this spiritual vision is the liberated stage, and Srila Shukadeva Goswami attained that stage. Srila Vyasadeva was also in the transcendental stage, but because he was in a householder's life, he did not pretend to be a liberated soul as a man of custom.
That's a nice
Interesting.
thing.
Anything specific you like? No. Just everything.
It's about materialistic world, about how they interpret it now. Through the dress, how the man attracted to woman.
Hmm.
Through the dress. That's what it is.
That's what it is. Suppose he, Srila Shukadeva, the son of Vyasa, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapura, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded. Purple. The present city of Delhi was formerly known as Hastinapura because it was first established by King Hasti. Goswami Shukadeva, after leaving his paternal home, was roaming like a madman, and therefore it was very difficult for the citizens to recognize him in his exalted position. A sage is not therefore recognized by sight, but by hearing. One should approach a sadhu or great sage not to see but to hear him. If one is not prepared to hear the words of a sadhu, there is no profit. Shukadeva Goswami was a sadhu who could speak on the transcendental activities of the Lord. He did not satisfy the whims of ordinary citizens. He was recognized when he spoke on the subject of Bhagavatam, and he never attempted jugglery like a magician. Outwardly he appeared to be a retarded, dumb and madman, but in fact he was the most elevated transcendental personality. Number 7. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is stated here as the essence of the Vedas. It is not an imaginary story as it is sometimes considered by unauthorized men. It is also called Shuka Samhita, or the Vedic hymn spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, the great liberated sage. Number 8. He, Shukadeva Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence for more than half an hour at the time of milking the cow, and he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of preaching the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with householders, save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householder should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to the worldly man. For one who is in the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide. Number 9. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. Purport. The birth of Maharaj Parikshit is wonderful because in the womb of his mother he was protected by the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. His activities are also wonderful because he chastised Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow. To kill cows means to end human civilization. He wanted to protect the cow from being killed by the great representative of sin. His death is also wonderful because he got previous notice of his death, which is wonderful for any mortal being, and thus he prepared himself for passing away by sitting down on the bank of the Ganges and hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. During all the days he heard Bhagavatam. He did not take food or drink, nor did he sleep a moment. So everything about him is wonderful, and his activities are worth hearing attentively. Desire is expressed herein to hear about him in detail. Number 10. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? Purport. Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of the world and all the seas and oceans, and he did not have to take the trouble to acquire such a kingdom by his own effort. He inherited it from his grandfathers, Maharaj Yudhishthira and brothers. Besides that, he was doing well in the administration and was worthy of the good names of his forefathers. Consequently, there was nothing undesirable in his opulence and administration. Then why should he give up all these favorable circumstances and sit down on the bank of the Ganges, fasting till death? This is astonishing, and therefore all were eager to know the cause. 11. He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed insuperable kingly opulences. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Just checking, what is insuperable? Insuperable. Shall I tell you? If I open the dictionary.
I have it first way.
Okay,
It means
Impossible to overcome.
impossible to overcome.
The highest.
In,
Superlative. Highest.
insuperable. Okay, I like it. So the last sentence was, he was full of youth and strength, and he possessed insuperable kingly opulences. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Purport. There was nothing undesirable in his life. He was quite a young man who could enjoy life with power and opulence. So there was no question of retiring from active life. There was no difficulty in collecting the state taxes because he was so powerful and chivalrous that even his enemies would come to him and bow down at his feet and surrender all wealth for their own benefit. Maharaj Parikshit was a pious king. He conquered his enemies, and therefore the kingdom was full of prosperity. There was enough milk, grains and metals, and all the rivers and mountains were full of potency. So materially everything was satisfactory. Therefore there was no question of untimely giving up his kingdom and life. The sages were eager to hear about all this. 12. Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of God live only for the welfare, development and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was shelter for others? Purport. Parikshit Maharaj was an ideal king and householder because he was a devotee of the personality of God. A devotee of the Lord automatically has all good qualifications. And the emperor was a typical example of this. Personally, he had no attachment for all the worldly opulences in his possession. But since he was king for the all-around welfare of his citizens, he was always busy in the welfare work of the public, not only for this life, but also for the next. He would not allow slaughterhouses or killing of cows. He was not a foolish and partial administrator who would arrange for the protection of one living being and allow another to be killed. Because he was a devotee of the Lord, he knew perfectly well how to conduct his administration for everyone's happiness, men, animals, plants, and all living creatures. He was not selfishly interested. Selfishness is either self-centered or self-extended. He was neither. His interest was to please the Supreme Truth, personality of God. The king is the representative of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the king's interest must be identical with that of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord wants all living beings to be obedient to him and thereby become happy. Therefore, the king's interest is to guide all subjects back to the kingdom of God. Hence, the activities of the citizens should be so coordinated that they can at the end go back home and back to God. Under the administration of the representative king, the kingdom is full of opulence. At that time, human beings need not eat animals. There are ample food, grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables, so that the human beings, as well as the animals, can eat sumptuously and to their heart's content. If all living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rules, there cannot be any disturbance between one living being and another. Emperor Parikshit was a worthy king, and therefore all were happy during his reign. 13. We know that you're the expert in the meaning of all subjects, except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Purport. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the Parivrajaks. The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, but the Parivrajakacharyas, or learned preachers, are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivrajakacharyas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmanas, who are meant for administering Vedic rites. Yet it should not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in different ways. There is no difference also between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and Itihasas. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyandina Shruti that all the Vedas, namely the Sama, Attara, Rik, Yajur, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, etc., are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. The only difference is that the Vedic mantras are mostly begun with Pranava Omkara, and it requires some training to practice the metric pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that does not mean that Srimad Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is ripened fruit for all the Vedas, as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, is absorbed in the studies of the Bhagavatam, although he is already self-realized. Srila Sutta Goswami is following his footsteps, and therefore his position is not the least less important, because he was not expert in chanting Vedic mantras with metric pronunciation, which depends more on practice than actual realization. Realization is more important than parrot-like chant. Amanda, would you like to continue?
Suta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Purport. There is a chronological order of the four millenniums, namely Satya, Dwarpa, Treta and Kali, but sometimes there is overlapping. During the regime of Vaivasvatamanu, there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the four millenniums, and the third millennium appeared prior to the second. In that particular millennium, Lord Sri Krishna also descends, and because of this there was some particular alteration. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of the Vasu fisherman, and the father was the great sage Parashara Muni. That is the history of Vyasadev's birth. Every millennium is divided into 3 periods, and each period is called a Sandhya. Vyasadeva appeared in the 3rd Sandhya of that particular age. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun, rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Sarasvati, and sat alone to concentrate. Purport. The river Sarasvati is flowing in the Badrigashram area of the Himalayas, so the place indicated here is Samya Prash in Badrigashram, where Sri Vyasadeva is residing. Text 16. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Purport. The great sages like Vyasadeva are liberated souls, and therefore they can see clearly past and future. Thus he could see the future anomalies in the Kali age, and accordingly he made arrangement for the people in general, so that they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. The people in general in this age of Kali are too much interested in matter, which is temporary. Because of ignorance, they are unable to evaluate the assets of life and be enlightened in spiritual knowledge. Text 17 and 18. The great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge could see, through his transcendental vision, the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. Purport. The unmanifested forces of time are so powerful that they reduce all matter to oblivion in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of a round of 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the duration of the material body of the people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportions as it did in other ages. The cow does not give as much milk as it used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and animals, do not have sumptuous, nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally the duration of life is reduced. The memory is short, intelligence is meagre, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so on. The great sage Vyasadeva could see this by his transcendental vision. As an astrologer can see the future fate of a man, or an astronomer can foretell the solar and lunar eclipses, those liberated souls who can see through the scriptures can foretell the future of all mankind. They can see this due to their sharp vision of spiritual attainment. And all such transcendentalists who are naturally devotees of the Lord are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going to happen 5 minutes ahead. In this age, the people in general, as well as their so-called leaders, are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They are always disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age there are so many TB patients in TB hospitals, but formerly this was not so because the time was not so unfavourable. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give a reception to the transcendentalists who are representatives of Srila Vyasadeva, and selfless workers always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all statuses and orders of life. The greatest philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent the missions of Vyas, Narada, Madhva, Chaitanya, Rupa, Saraswati, etc. They are all one and the same. The personalities may be different, but the aim of the mission is one and the same, namely, to deliver the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. Text 19. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And, to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. Purport. Formerly there was only the Veda of the name Yajur, and the 4 divisions of sacrifices were there specifically mentioned. But to make them more easily performable, the Veda was divided into 4 divisions of sacrifice, just to purify the occupational service of the 4 orders. Above the 4 Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva, there are the Puranas, the Mahabharata, the Samhitas, etc., which are known as the 5th Veda. Sri Vyasadeva and his many disciples were all historical personalities, and they were very kind and sympathetic toward the fallen souls of this age of Kali. As such, the Puranas and Mahabharata were made from related historical facts which explained the teaching of the 4 Vedas. There is no point in doubting the authority of the Puranas and Mahabharata as parts and parcels of the Vedas. In the Chandogya Upanishad 7.1.14, the Puranas and Mahabharata, generally known as histories, are mentioned as the 5th Veda. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, That is the way of ascertaining the respective values of the revealed scriptures. Text 20. The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and the authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the 5th Veda. Text 21. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini the professor of the Sama Veda, Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajur Veda. Purport. The different Vedas were entrusted to different learned scholars for development in various ways. Text 22. The Sumanta Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father Romaharshan was entrusted with the Puranas and historical record. Purport. In the Shruti mantras also it is stated that Angira Muni, who strictly followed the rigid principles of the Atharva Veda, was the leader of the followers of the Atharva Vedas. Text 23. All these learned scholars in their turn rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand-disciples and great-grand-disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Purport. The original source of knowledge is the Vedas. There are no branches of knowledge, either mundane or transcendental, which do not belong to the original text of the Vedas. They have simply been developed into different branches. They were originally rendered by great respectable and learned professors. In other words, the Vedic knowledge, broken into different branches by different disciplic successions, has been distributed all over the world. No one therefore can claim independent knowledge beyond the Vedas. Text 24. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. Purport. The Veda is one, and the reasons for its divisions in many parts are explained herewith. The seed of all knowledge, or the Veda, is not a subject matter which can be easily understood by any ordinary man. There is a stricture that no one should try to learn the Veda who is not a qualified Brahmin. This stricture has been wrongly interpreted in so many ways. A class of men who claim Brahminical qualification simply by their birthright in the family of a Brahmana claim that the study of the Veda is a monopoly of the Brahmana caste only. Another section of the people take this as an injustice to members of other castes who do not happen to take birth in a Brahmana family. But both of them are misguided. The Vedas are subjects which had to be explained even to Brahmaji by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the subject matter is understood by persons with exceptional qualities of goodness. Persons who are in the mode of passion and ignorance are unable to understand the subject matter of the Vedas. The ultimate goal of Vedic knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The personality is very rarely understood by those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance. In the Satya Yuga, everyone was situated in the mode of goodness. Gradually, the mode of goodness declined during the Treta and Dwapara Yugas, and the general mass of people became corrupt. In the present age, the mode of goodness is almost nil, and so for the general mass of people, the kind-hearted, powerful sage Srila Vyasadeva divided the Vedas in various ways so that they may be practically followed by less intelligent persons in the modes of passion and ignorance. It is explained in the next shloka as follows.
Shri Shudra Dvija Bandhunam Traina Shruti Gochara Karma Shaya Simandanam Shayavam Bhavitiha Iti Bharata Makyanam Kripaya Munakritam. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice-born. Purport. The friends of the twice-born families are those who are born in the families of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, or the spiritually cultured families. but who themselves are not equal to their forefathers. Such descendants are not recognized as such for want of purificatory achievements. The purificatory activities begin even before the birth of a child, and the seed-giving reformatory process is called Garbhadana Samskara. One who has not undergone such Garbhadana Samskara or spiritual family planning is not accepted as being of actual twice-born family. The Garbhadana Samskara is followed by other purificatory processes, out of which the sacred thread ceremony is one. This is performed at the time of spiritual initiation. After this particular samskara, one is rightly called twice-born. One birth is calculated during the seed-giving samskara, and the second birth is calculated at the time of spiritual initiation. One who has been able to undergo such important samskaras can be called a bona fide twice-born. If the father and mother do not undertake the process of spiritual family planning and simply beget children out of passion only, their children are called Vijabandhus. These Vijabandhus are certainly not as intelligent as the children of the regular twice-born families. The Vijabandhus are classified with the Shudras and the woman class, who are by nature less intelligent. The Shudras and the woman class do not have to undergo any samskara, save and accept the ceremony of marriage. The less intelligent classes of men, namely women, Shudras, and unqualified sons of the higher castes, are devoid of necessary qualifications to understand the purpose of the transcendental Vedas. For them the Mahabharata was prepared. The purpose of the Mahabharata is to administer the purpose of the Vedas, and therefore within this Mahabharata the summary Veda of Bhagavad Gita is placed. The less intelligent are more interested in stories than in the philosophy, and therefore the philosophy of the Vedas in the form of Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Lord Sri Krishna. Vyasadeva and Lord Krishna are both on the transcendental plane, and therefore they collaborated in doing good to the fallen souls of this age. The Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. It is the first book of spiritual values, as the Upanishads are. The Vedanta philosophy is the subject matter for study by the spiritual graduates. Only the postgraduate spiritual student can enter into the spiritual or devotional service of the Lord. It is a great science, and the great professor is the Lord himself in the form of Lord Shri Krishna, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And persons who are empowered by him can initiate others in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. 26. O twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Purport. Sri Vyasadeva was not satisfied with himself, although he had prepared literatures of Vedic value for the all-around welfare of the general mass of people. It was expected that he would be satisfied by all such activities, but ultimately he was not satisfied. 27. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself. Purport. The sage began to search out the cause of not being satisfied at heart. Perfection is never attained until one is satisfied at heart. This satisfaction of heart has to be searched out beyond matter. Text 28-29. I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual master, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by their rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others, friends of the twice-born, can see the path of religion. Purport. No one can understand the import of the Vedas without having undergone a strict disciplinary vow and a disciplic succession. The Vedas, spiritual masters, and sacrificial fire must be worshipped by the desiring candidate. All these intricacies of Vedic knowledge are systematically presented in the Mahabharata for the understanding of the woman class, the laborer class, and the unqualified members of Brahmana, Kshatriyas, or Vaishya families. In this age, the Mahabharata is more essential than the original Vedas. 13. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. Purport. Undoubtedly, Srila Vyasadeva was complete in all the details of Vedic achievements. Purification of the living being submerged in matter is made possible by the prescribed activities in the Vedas, but the ultimate achievement is different. Unless it is attained, the living being, even though fully equipped, cannot be situated in the transcendently normal stage. Srila Vyasadeva appeared to have lost the clue and therefore felt dissatisfaction. 31. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. Purport. The dissatisfaction which was being felt by Srila Vyasadeva is expressed here in his own words. This was felt for the normal condition of the living being in the devotional service of the Lord. Unless one is fixed in the normal condition of service, neither the Lord nor the living being can become fully satisfied. This defect was felt by him when Narada Muni, his spiritual master, reached him. It is described as follows. 32. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna, Dvaipayana and Vyasa on the banks of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. Purport. The vacuum felt by Vyasadeva was not due to his lack of knowledge. Bhagavad Dharma is purely devotional service of the Lord, to which the monist has no access. The monist is not counted amongst the Paramahamsas, the most perfect of the renounced order of life. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of narrations of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Although Vyasadeva was an empowered divinity, he still felt dissatisfaction because in none of his works were the transcendental activities of the Lord properly explained. The inspiration was infused by Sri Krishna directly in the heart of Vyasadeva, and thus he felt the vacuum as explained above. It is definitely expressed herewith that without the transcendental loving service of the Lord, everything is void. But in the transcendental service of the Lord, everything is tangible without any separate attempt at fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculation. 33. And we will end here, the last one. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. Purport. Vidi means Brahma, the first created living being. He is the original student as well as professor of the Vedas. He learned it from Sri Krishna and taught Narada first. So Narada is the second acharya in the line of spiritual disciplic succession. He is the representative of Brahma, and therefore he is respected exactly like Brahma, the father of all vidis, regulations. Similarly, all other successive disciples in the chain are also equally respected as representatives of the original spiritual master. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada. Yay. Just in time. Thank you very much for your attention. Any last comments before we finish?
Interesting that Prabhupada mentions that Mahabharata is more important for this age than Vedas.
And also it mentions that people are losing memory, like short-term memory. They are, like everything is distant from from everything. Like, it's true. Everything is like, machine. Machine does everything. Machine, like farming and everything.
Machine.
Yeah. Like they destroy everything. Like mass production. Yeah.
It's true. There was one point about memory. I talked to a doctor one time, and he talked that as you get older, holes start to appear in your brain. As you get older, more, and so therefore your memory gets worse and worse and worse. But the great sages, because they were able to live in a very good way, basically, that wouldn't have happened to them because they were always thinking properly, and their lifestyles were perfectly
giving kind of energy to their whole life and to their brain and whatever.
Yeah.
So in that way they didn't lose their memories like what happens today.
Intoxication and drugs, alcohol, all this is making these holes appear very good.
Yeah.
And even like I saw recently the documentary, like they were telling about this modern farming. Like I think it's in Sweden, like the researchers, they found like all the bacteria, natural bacteria, they all are destroyed. They call it, this is pesticides, but those pests are necessary for farming. Yeah, like we destroy everything, like very, like nothing, no nutrition, no nothing.
I heard that again today about some devotee was explaining that what we do is, the scientists, they're trying to get knowledge, and they're kind of like they're trying to force it out of Mother Nature all the time. That using their schemes. I want to get this knowledge so that I can do this. I want this and that. Whereas in spiritual levels, we're humbly trying to serve Krishna, and Krishna reveals. It's just like a completely different process, So we're just, when you were mentioning science there, pesticides, trying to get how to do this and to do that.
All are, nature.
Yeah.
And
I was trying to be a controller.
Yeah.
So I'm not. So if they would at least listen to these narrations. So amazing, everything is we would hear. All that we are facing now, it's been explained like long ago, what the sages feared and foreseen, and they gave us this, and they asked the questions to Swamis.
Just say as well, because you were saying everybody, we're all controllers. It's like now that the Vaishyas are in control more so, and therefore they just want to eat more, exploit more, get more for them. That's the kind of the whole order of the day, and there's no vision, whatever, no vision anywhere. So that's why these people are always trying to control things and making a complete mess of the planet.
Money is the honey.
Money is the honey. You're true. You're pretty true. That's what that's what other people they see.
It's the God, no?
It's the God.
Money is the God.
And even the honey is not good anymore.
For Vaishyas, money is not.
Yes, I distributed books yesterday. Henry,
Oh, Henry.
I wanted to participate in marathon.
Yeah.
So, and I stopped one boy, and he said, "I don't read books. Only thing I read is the money. I read my notes on it. My God is money." He said that literally, yeah. Like, but Sri Prabhupada said that these books, at one point, the human society will note this down in history that this movement has saved the human society in its darkest hour. And this knowledge is so clear, so straightforward that at one point, in society they start to awaken. Intelligent people who are fed up with all this exploitation, and they start to awaken to this knowledge. So Prabhupada predicted that it will save the humanity in its darkest hour. So
it's like more opening, eyes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, that's why I encourage everyone to read Bhagavatam, to participate. You can read together. You can read by yourself. It's easier together, or online, or come here, and give it to others. Yeah, give this knowledge to others. Once you read, you don't want to keep it just for yourself. So, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Darkest Hour, I was reading I was listening to Dandavats. There was a Chaitanya Charan, you know Chaitanya Charan?
From Mumbai?
From Mumbai, yeah.
Famous.
Yeah. He was talking about the kind of preaching methods even at the moment. That it was just quite ironic. He said that, you know, nowadays people are so much not into any authority whatsoever, in the West especially, that even to trying to preach to them, you know, and telling them, you know, quoting them and saying this to them, and they find it very difficult to accept it. But that he was making the point that a lot of people today, they're ready in a kind of a different way, and we have to try to bring them from one level to the next without trying to get them on the absolute truth straight away, because they can't accept something like that. So he gave the example of the yoga previously was for people